Check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 3. Check, 1, 2, 3. Hello everyone, my name is Flavio Lira and we are here with our YouTube channel at Lessonface, our studio in the West Village, New York City. And this is a run-through, this is a rehearsal for a series that we are launching next week called Face the Music. We are super excited about this series. We are inviting some great artists to our studio here to talk about motivation, inspiration, in music in general, like what makes them evolve and they grow as musicians and as artists overall. Today we are doing a, let's say, a dress rehearsal for that event, and stay tuned at our website so you can sign up as well. It's free, always good. And we're having a guest here, Yonit Spiegelman. You might know her. She's got a ton of videos in our YouTube channel. And we're doing a Q&A with her. And for that, we're inviting our great and fellow Lessonface staff, Chris, who will be inviting her today and interviewing her. So I'll give it out to them. Chris and Yonit.
How's it going, Yonit?
Good. What's up?
So I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your background and how you got into music, and talk a little bit about you as a teacher.
Sounds good.
Great. So I'd love just to start by time traveling. Let's go into the past a little bit. How did you get started playing music?
So there's how did I get started playing music, but there's how did I get to play bass, which I guess are two different stories.
Yes. Why don't you tell us story number one and then lead us into story number two?
Sounds good. Well, my parents always wanted me to learn something that has to do with music. So I think my first experience with music school or lessons was when I was 6, and I was sent to, we had keyboard, not even piano, it was keyboard classes in school. That's what I remember, that we have a lot of like those old Casio keyboards and everybody was trying to play. Apparently I did have a private instructor when I was 6 that came to our house and gave me lessons, but he fired me because I wouldn't practice.
He fired you?
He fired me as a student. Yeah, so that was one of my first experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
But were you like into music? So even if it wasn't your instrument of choice at the time,
first experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
Sure.
I do remember that I always liked to go to my
into music, so even if it wasn't your instrument of choice at the time.
First experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
But were you like into music, so even if it wasn't your instrument of choice at the time?
First experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
But were you like into music, so even if it wasn't your instrument of choice at the time?
First experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
But were you like into music, so even if it wasn't your instrument of choice at the time?
First experiences with trying to get into music life, is that I didn't practice, so he just let me go as a student.
But were you like into music, so even if it wasn't your
Trying to get into music life was that they also didn't have any idea what that was. And they're like, okay, whatever you want to do, let's go to it. And went to the conservatory, and the director at the conservatory said that trying to get into music life was that I don't know why he said that. I still to this day want to ask him why he tell me or ask me to start playing guitar. I mean, obviously I have a lot of things in common, but not really anything specific. Like, you don't have to learn how to play guitar before you play bass.
Yep.
But they made me do that, and for 2 years I learned how to play guitar. And after those 2 years, I came back and I said, I want to play the bass. I don't know why, but I guess that experience of hearing that instrument made it so intense for me. And I remember the first lessons that I had with my bass teacher, who was amazing and really set me off to the start for what I'm doing today. He was asking me why I wanted to start playing bass, and I just told him, I don't know, I like the way it sounded. So he said, so it's not like you don't know Flea, like you don't want to be like Flea, or you don't want to be like, you know, Marcus Miller or something. No, I mean, I don't know who Marcus Miller is. Well, it's not back in the day. And I knew Flea, but I was like, no, I just want to play bass. I want to play music and support it. And I don't know, I like the way it sounds.
Yeah, and what other instruments have you added to your repertoire since then?
So I kept on going with guitar a little bit, and that's how I write my music, mostly. But when I started playing the bass and I got more into theory, I also went to piano, because bass is a melodic instrument, and I did realize I need a harmonic instrument for reference. So I go to guitar and piano as well.
And then how did you get started with teaching?
I think I just started doing it when I was about 16. I was working at a falafel shop, trying to save up some money, and my boss asked me if I teach guitar, and I said that I can. And he just sent his like 12-year-old daughter, and we started having lessons, and it just came naturally to me. Further after that, I served in the IDF, in the Israeli army, and I was serving as an education soldier. So that's when I got really into education and really started formally teaching, and I was tour guiding all through Jerusalem. But that was my first experience. I just started teaching. I just started explaining it, and I guess it worked.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And how has your teaching career evolved since then?
So I took a little bit of a break from music when I was in the army, and I did get a lot of like educational tools and how to speak in front of people and how to engage and ways to think. After I was released, I started my music studies, and I guess it was just natural for me to start teaching from then. So I went to teach in a conservatory in Israel, in a town called Yonit. And I just kept on going with it. You know, I loved it, and I had more and more students, and after it just kept on going with my career. I guess I was trying to like work on my career as a musician, but I kept on teaching as I was doing it, and evolving my ways of teaching. And so I was teaching then, and then I got a scholarship, moved to Boston, went to Berkeley, taught in Boston as well, until I graduated. And I was still teaching in a few different conservatories, but eventually, after signing up to Lessonface and getting more and more students, I now teach only on Lessonface, only online. Haven't had one-on-one lessons in about 3 years, I think, all online.
All right.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the first question I asked you, which was about how you got into guitar. And whenever you're working with a new student, how would you recommend that a student chooses their first instrument?
Right. So it's an interesting question. I guess it is kind of, you know, it depends on the person itself. But I think that it seemed to have worked for me. The actual like hearing the instrument. Now, it's something that you may get while, you know, watching a YouTube video or watching performances, but I feel like maybe going out there and seeing what really sounds good to you, what relaxes you, what you feel like you want to be creating.
Yep.
And I think it's all about the sound and then trying it out. I mean, obviously you don't have to like wait until this will be the chosen one with like, you know, rays of sun just like shining on that one. But try it out. And today it's so easy. You can rent instruments, you can, you know, borrow from friends, but it's really all about the sound. If you like the way it sounds, if you feel something when you play it, then it's your instrument.
And when would you consider, especially for a beginning student, adding a new instrument or just saying, you know what, I need to try something new altogether?
Whenever you feel like you need it. You know, I think that's why, that might be the reason why I didn't practice. You know, you don't practice because, well, you know, you might be in a situation that you're not learning something that you want, but I feel like maybe you're not practicing because you don't feel an absolute like connection with the instrument. So I think that if you want to try something new, as long as it, you know, it's something that is doable and doesn't have to be financially too heavy on you, why not try it out? And then if you like it, just go for it.
Yep.
You know, you can always find a way.
And you know, as somebody who has made a career out of music, how do you find time to practice? And really, what does that practice look like for you now in a musical career?
Tough question. It's really hard to find time to practice. I will admit that between lessons and between rehearsals and performances, which like I will be with my instrument hours and hours in the day, but that doesn't mean that I'm practicing. The fact that I'm rehearsing is not really practicing. I mean, it's obviously practicing for a certain thing, but it's not what I consider practicing. It's just working in projects at the point of my musicianship. So my practicing, how is it different? Well, first of all, it's not, I can't sit for hours and practice, so my practice regime is between 20 minutes and 45 minutes. I don't do more than that because I also need to watch my hands. I need to watch not to overplay so that I can keep on playing on my regular projects. I guess it has to do, I would practice scales and I would practice chords, but I won't practice them specifically just with a metronome. That's what changed, I guess, that because my knowledge is available for me to use right now, if I need to practice my scales, I would go to a DAW, to a recording software, and I'll just like put some chords in, and I'll say, okay, so this is, I'm just practicing D minor. I want to see how I'm practicing my Dorian on it. Or I want to see how I practice like, you know, different things on it. And I will kind of practice and compose at the same time. That's one aspect of my practicing, like taking modes and scales and different things and actually put them to use and record them and just have fun with it, make music. And then the other thing is I will read. I will read music. I do practice my reading all the time, whether it's listening to something I like and just writing it down for me to read and for my students to read, or I'll just take some classical scores, or I'll take jazz scores and I'll read and do some improvising. I don't necessarily work on one thing for like a whole month. I would just visit different elements of my playing, and yep, I guess that's the way I practice today.
Yeah. It's interesting that you teased out the difference between rehearsing versus practicing.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's also like a third element, which is just like exploration and fun.
Yeah.
How do you find your ability to still continue to do that?
Exploration of fun.
And fun, right?
And
so
fun.
just tinkering around, playing around.
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question. Exploration. I think I can afford not to play something I don't find fun.
Yep.
Even when it's still work, you know, and I know that like there's the saying, I remember seeing a quote about like of this a while ago, that if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. That's wrong. I don't agree with that at all. It's like if you love what you do, you will do it all the time and you will try to be better all the time, and you take everything that you do personally and it can really take over your life. So I guess there are lines that shouldn't be crossed, and sometimes it is a good time to, you know, put down the instrument and see, okay, why am I doing this? How am I making this sound good? And what do I want to do with it in the end? I think that the exploration and the fun, it just comes when I do something good and when I do something that I believe in, and when I push. For example, if I work with my band and I'll set up a show with my band, it will be 90% emailing, trying to find the time to rehearse, printing out the scores, fixing the scores. But then in rehearsal itself, when I play the music, I'll just be like, oh my God, this sounds so good. I can't believe those amazing musicians are playing my music.
Yep.
So it's kind of like knowing that when I'm emailing them 500 times because I can't find a time to rehearse with them. But it's really being present and enjoying the rehearsal and really being present and enjoying the performance that I think makes it.
Yep.
And yeah, when I play with other people, it's the same. It's like I rehearse, and you know, it takes sometimes time until something sounds good, or just it's really just being present and knowing that, wow, this sounds good, and I'm part of it. I'm making music, and I'm enjoying it, and perhaps other people that will come to performance, the performance will enjoy it. So yeah.
I want to take us back to Yonit the teacher, and you know, putting your teacher hat on. How do you define a successful class session? Or, put a little bit differently, how would you define a successful practice session for one of your students?
Okay. So I'll start with, well, how would I define a successful lesson, I guess. Every time that I see a student made a progress for me, it doesn't matter if it's like 1 inch or if it's a huge leap. I think that it's a progress, and I can see that on their faces usually. You know, I like giving something that could be theoretical or it could be like technical, and then seeing like their face change when they can see that they can do it. Of course, you need to practice in order to make it better, but I think just thinking about something and just changing your perspective and then having them do something that they couldn't do before, that's a successful lesson for me. Or even just knowing something that they didn't know before, because that's what the lessons are for. It's for me to say something or introduce something that the student doesn't know, and hopefully get them to learn something new and be better from it. Practice sessions, you know, I'm not there when they're practicing, so it's kind of funny, but I can see it. I can always see it. I think just putting the time working on something, whether it's 15 minutes or whether it's an hour in a day, you make progress. I've had, and I obviously, again, I see it in the lessons, but I've had one person that I was playing with that is a really, really famous musician in Israel that I was playing with just before I left, and he said something that really stayed with me, and that's every time that you play a note on your instrument, you got, you know, further somewhere. Not sure where, but you made another step. Like every single time that you play an open note on the bass, it's like you did something, you learned something, you are better. Because we just try, and when we try something, it has to move, even if you don't see it. And students may not see it many times, but yeah, every time that you do something on your instrument, every time that you learn the smallest thing, you get better. So that's why practice sessions, I know that it's hard because you'll be like, oh, I have only 15 minutes and then I have to go to work. I can't possibly do anything in 15 minutes. No, you can. You can, and it will actually make it better. And maybe even if you just play those 10 minutes, you will want to play 10 more minutes when you come back from work. And that's going to make it, it's going to make it better.
So I want to explore this a little bit more with you. So again, thinking about you as a teacher, what is your philosophy, or what role do you see you as a teacher playing in making sure that if a student is going to take 10 minutes and explore one thing and just get better at one thing, how do you direct that and make sure that student is focusing on the right thing in comparison to just letting the student just kind of meander and explore?
Right. I think the problem with music, which is not really a problem, it's just a situation that exists, is that you can never stop learning. So there's always something to learn, and not only there's always something to learn, there are always too many things to learn. What I do with my students is I just see where they lead me. I don't lead the lesson. I mean, I obviously lead the lesson, but I draw from what they tell me, and I draw from what they're playing and what their interest is. So in order to make it successful, it's you kind of answered it in a way when you asked it. It needs to be just very specific. If you practice for 10 minutes, you have to have a very simple and doable goal. And I think that's the secret of progressing. It's not like, okay, I want to play slap like Marcus Miller. No. It could be like a bigger like goal. Okay, I want to play slap and I want to be, you know, be able to play Marcus Miller stuff. But then you can't expect yourself to do it in 10 minutes of practicing. But if you have this 8-bar exercise of slap, and it's kind of like beginner level, right, you know, in your alley, you can practice that for 10 minutes. Because, right, everybody can practice 8 bars for 10 minutes. And they will be better after practicing it, even if it's just for 10 minutes. If you try to play a Marcus Miller song and you try to like transcribe it in 10 minutes, no, you're not going to be able to do that. You need more time. You need more of like a planned practice regime. So it depends. Some students want to put more time, so I'll give them that. We'll do more of the bigger stuff. Some students don't have time, and some students, it keeps on changing, you know, so it's like fluid.
And then how do you inspire confidence in your students to pursue their musical endeavors, right? So if they're exploring, how do you make sure they feel really great about themselves to explore and to play and to practice and just try to get better at that one thing or that set of many things?
I think the #1 thing that I do, and I try to do it right off the first lesson, especially if I see like some, you know, confidence stuff, there's no judgment. Like I declare my lessons as a judgment-free zone. So if you want, like you bring whatever music you want to bring, and you will make as many mistakes as you need to, you know? And it's a safe space because we do it, I mean, most of my students, some of them do it to be professionals, which is very specifically defined. And again, there's like no judgment, and I tell them, if you don't make mistakes, you won't be able to grow as a musician. And a lot of them just do it for fun, and they're, I guess, a little bit insecure sometimes. It's just like, you can do whatever you want, and I don't, like, I hate when some students will say, oh, I suck, oh, I'm like, I'm dumb. No, there's none of it. You're just trying to make music because it's awesome. So no judgment, everybody can do that if they put their mind into it and if they try. That's the kind of message I'm trying to send my students.
So a little bit of a philosophical question building off that. Do you believe that practice should always be musical?
Depending on what your goal is, I think that it should be musical for everybody. I mean, in general, there should be a musical element. I think that for people who actually want to pursue just for their own fun, it could be like strictly musical. It doesn't have to be playing. It could also be listening. I think listening is a huge, huge, huge part of learning, because if you don't listen to new stuff, how would you know what to play, or how would you know how to pursue it? If you don't listen to someone who did it before, you won't really know how to imitate that and then, you know, express other stuff beyond that on your own. So I feel like, but that's for people who just want to pursue music as a hobby. I do feel like that for professional musicians, there's, or for people who want to take the hobby to the next level and work with other people, some of the practice has to be with playing with other people. So it's listening to other people while playing. I do find myself talking a lot about being respectful to other musicians who you're playing with. So it starts with listening. It also could be on time, and it could also be like take the time to discuss what you're playing and understand between each other.
So music is more of a dialogue or a polylogue. It doesn't have to just be.
It's a whole way of communication. I even sometimes I have like my students writing charts, and I will say, okay, that's great, and the music is amazing because we're working on it. I know what they're doing. But I'll say, okay, but it doesn't look as good.
Yep.
Why don't you put it in like on the computer, you know, like print it so it will look amazing, so people will see it and be like, I want to play it now.
Yep.
Because it looks good, and I bet that it sounds really good.
Yep.
It's kind of like everything all around, which also has to do with just being professional and caring, really
Yep.
putting effort, which is not necessarily musical, but
Sure.
I feel like that for a professional musician, it's a must.
Sure, sure. I want to go back to something that you said before, which is this idea of listening as a form of practice.
Mm-hmm.
That's really powerful. Will you just speak a little bit more about that? It's a really cool sentiment, and what I'm really curious to hear about is what advice would you give other teachers to help foster that same mentality in their students?
Okay. So listening as a form of practice is kind of like when you learn how to speak a new
No.
language. Like when I was learning how to speak English, I would watch TV in English.
Yep.
And it would help. I know that it sounds funny because it's watching TV, but it helps because you need to hear the language.
Yep.
And you need to see people put it to use. The fact that you learn I, love, and apple doesn't mean that you can actually use it
Yep.
in a way that, you know, that communicates with people or that is just usable.
Yep.
So that's one thing. Like all my students who want to start playing jazz and hasn't really been exposed to it before, I send them all my favorite albums because I want them to hear how other people did it before and how it should sound like, because they need to like find the accent when,
Yep.
when they play it. So one element is be exposed to what you want to do and inspired from other people who did it before you and know how to speak it. Second is at the place that I am right now, so like the more professional musicians, I would listen to bass lines is because I already, you know, I'd done rhythm training and I'd done ear training. I can sort of figure out what is happening there, not all the time, but I can figure out what's happening there a lot just by listening to it. I'll listen to the groove and I'll be like, oh cool, he's doing like that syncopated rhythm. It's really sounding good.
Yeah.
And I can take that and put that in my playing without even transcribing it, just because I was listening to it and it influenced me. Or I'll hear like a certain sound that they're doing and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it has to do with like, you know, from bass, but also, and especially maybe even for composing, to hear what other people do, to hear what they did with melodies. Then you can go, you know, you have a second, go to the piano, try to figure out what they're
Yeah.
doing, go to the guitar. But it's inspiring. I'd like to think of my music, whether it's bass playing, whether it's composing, as basically just like fragments of things that I like. I just take everything that I like and I put it all together, and that's what makes my bass playing. So my bass playing is like part James Jamerson, and it's part like Pino Palladino, and it's part, not that I'm as good as them,
Yeah.
but I try to inspire from them and put it in my like bass writing when I work for somebody else and when I do my own bass playing. And then my music is the same thing. I'll take some folk like melodies and I'll take some world music, harmonies, I don't know, like, you know, I'll try to just put it all in there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's how things are created.
Yep.
You inspire from what happened before, and then you try to create like this nice, cool mishmash of yours for the future.
Yeah. So other than listening and exploration and just diving into something new and experiencing something new, what are some other strategies that you use to keep your students inspired and to really build that inspiration with kids or other students?
I think it's just listening to what they want. I don't come up front and I say, okay, that's what we're doing. You sign up for bass lesson, read that, or play that. Or you sign up for songwriting, okay, then take the song, tell me what they're doing there, then do something similar. Like, it doesn't work. I want them to do something they're connected to.
Mm-hmm.
So I will always, like every first lesson with me starts with like 15, 20 minutes of conversation. What do you want to do? What do you like? Why are you doing that? And I feel like that's the way to keep them engaged, is first to do something they like.
Mm-hmm.
Second is when I explain something, I don't just explain what it is, I explain why it is. So if I'm talking about, one of my favorite things is like kind of completely bursting the bubble of scales, because most people think, oh, there's C major scale, I'll just play a C chord, and then like that's what it's for. It's C major scale and C chord. And then I introduce them to the diatonic chord system. And I'm like, that's why a song is in C major. It's not just because the melody is C major. It's like, that's because all these chords live within this environment because of physics and because, you know, all the stuff that comes to it. And I'm like, that's why you'll play D minor 7. Play C major 7. It's not going to sound that bad.
Yeah.
But people are like, yeah, I never thought about it. So,
yeah.
Doing something that they're interested in and listening to them as students and following that instead of just creating my own way for them. I mean, I'll create our way together.
Yeah.
And then explaining why things are the way they are and not just like, okay, that's this, that's that, why don't you practice the scale and do, you know, in every other way possible with metronome on 230.
Yeah, I imagine this listening and this responding to the needs and the interests of your students probably comes with a lot of trial and error, right? Can you tell me about a time where you had, or either a time or, you know, a refined method at this point, how you switch strategies with a student? You know, if you're finding that something's not working, and how do you switch strategies and try something new?
I just drop whatever I was doing, and I'll be admitting with the student, look, we tried this and it doesn't work, right? It's too challenging. A lot of times is that something is too challenging, and I might be overexcited to send someone to do something, especially in the first lessons when I'm kind of filling them out. And I'll be like, okay, that's too challenging. Let's take it a step back. And I'll be very specific about there's no shame in taking a step back if you can't do something. That is something that I'm always, you know, willing to be. Again, it's the no judgment zone, judgment free. If something's not working, you take a step back. So I'll see if I overshot something, and I'll give them something more simple, and I'll tell them, you know, we tried something. We thought that this is like the level, but it's not happening. So let's take it back. Another time is that, you know, if I'll try to go one way with the student and I'll see that it's really not communicating so much with them or to them or like speaking to them, I'll say, okay, let's not do it that way. Let's try a different way, you know, because I think everything that we want to teach, there's a few different ways to teach it. I can teach harmony with jazz. I can teach harmony with songwriting, or I can teach harmony through transcribing rock songs. You know, so it's like every person has their way of learning, and sometimes I'll go the wrong way and I'll just say, okay, we tried that. Seems like it's not really working for you. Let's try something else. So
that's so important in your role as an educator, to be the person in the room to say, you know, that's not working. Let's try something in a different way.
Yeah.
I like that.
It should be forced.
So, changing gears a little bit here. What, if anything, do you believe is currently missing in music education?
Is currently missing? See, I'm like, I always taught privately, so I'm not sure exactly what's happening in schools, in the education system. I could see some of it, you know, happening in my music school in Israel and in Berkeley. I feel like what sometimes is missing, well, possibly time, will be the source of all of that. Time and which brings the resources. But I feel like just learning why things are the way they are, which is kind of what I was trying to get to with the harmony before, because a lot of things that are theory shouldn't be just theory. It should be practical. Like, I do believe that music theory needs to be taught on your instrument, because it needs to be used. And if it's not used, you know, what are you going to do with that? So for me, and it could be just the way that I was learning, that it made it really hard. For example, ear training was always really hard for me to study. It was always a real challenge for me, because I just couldn't get it when a teacher, you know, writes something on the board and then plays it on piano and says, okay, so this is 1, this is 4, this is 1, this is 5, this is 1. I needed to play. I needed to be in an environment, like in an ensemble, you know, to like really learn how it sounds, and like, oh, but that's what happens when I play the 4 and the 5. And it's only from really my playing that I got to understand and like put all the pieces together. So, but it's time, you know, because people need to teach the syllabus and have the students passing tests, and you don't necessarily have all the theory teachers to be sitting with like groups of 3 or 4 or 5 students and teach them that. And you know, I'm like picking on theory, but it could be a lot of subjects. It could also be improvisation. I feel like it needs to be something that's a little bit more personal, and sometimes it's just hard to accommodate that. So.
And do you see your role as an educator to move from just knowledge transfer to application?
What do you mean by that?
So basically what you were just saying about, you know, if I'm trying to learn ear training instead of just hearing 1-4-1, 1-5-1, actually picking up the guitar and picking 1-4-1, 1-5-1.
Yeah.
And that's what solidifies it.
Right.
So do you see your role as an educator to set this conditions for application?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that I'm not sure if it will substitute anything. I kind of feel like it should come with it.
Yep.
So I kind of try to, you know, show people, don't just write your theory homework on paper, play it.
Yep.
But it's hard sometimes for a person to know that they need to do that. You know, I feel like that is the most important part, and sometimes it just skips because teachers are just trying to pass on the information.
Yeah.
So yeah, it should like go with it. I don't know if substitute it or be like,
I like that. What do you do as a teacher to stay motivated and inspired to help others on their own musical journeys and their own musical ambitions?
I don't know if I do anything to stay motivated. I think I just do when having the right students. I think the more involved the student is, and the more excited they are about their progress, the more motivated I become. And you can ask my students, I'll often steal a few more minutes because I'm so excited because they practice and it sounds amazing and I want it to be even more amazing for next week.
Yeah.
So I don't really do anything. They do it. I just give them what I can.
Yeah.
And when I see that they're like going and completely skyrocketing with it, I just am motivated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. So I'm going to ask you to complete a sentence for me.
Okay.
So when a music student gets blank, blank happens. So 2 blanks there.
Right. I think when a music student gets invested, progress happens. You know, it's just when a music student gets interested, they go to places. So it is a matter of wanting to play. Like if you choose a great piece, or if you play a great piece to the student and you say, do you want to do that? And they do. That's what will make them do that. It's not just like, oh yeah, let's do this for next time.
I'm really hearing the theme from this entire conversation about exploration, finding what resonates with you, and diving into that. And that's really your role as a teacher, to find that thing that resonates with the student and helping that student explore that and push a little bit more on that and really just drill down into that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's not just finding it in the students. I have to say, it's finding it in me as well. I need to find something that resonates with me and the students. I've had, I mean, most of my students, I think we've had a lot of great success. There were students that, you know, we didn't match because I think that also I need to find something that I love within the musicality of student to want to keep on growing. I guess it's also part of the motivation. I need to find something that resonates with me.
Yeah.
That they do, and I feel their motivation, and then I just like click, and something just like goes from there.
Yeah.
So just it goes both ways.
Yeah. How much do you believe that musical success is due to innate ability, how much you practice, and how much is just pure luck?
Percentage-wise?
Sure, or whatever way you want to describe it.
There has to be some talent. There has to be some percentage of talent. It's definitely not the majority of what it is. But there has to be a good, foundation of talent. It's mostly hard work. You won't get, luck has to do with hard work. You're not going to get lucky if you're not hardworking. You need to plant seeds everywhere, and then one day a tree will grow somewhere because you planted it there. But, if you just plant one seed, it's not going to work. So luck definitely has to do with hard work. And then I'd like to think that a small part of it, which is probably just as important as talent, is trying to be a good human being to other people, which I know is like a very big thing that I just dropped here.
No, I like it. I like it.
But
tell me how this translates to music.
Well, even if you are the most talented person on earth, nobody's gonna call you back unless they're kind of masochistic if you're being mean to them, or if you're being a bad non-professional musician, if you're late, if you're disrespectful, if you don't go through the material before, you know, or if you bail on them. I don't know, stuff like that. I will not call any musician who does that, even if they're the best on earth. So talent is not going to help you much there. And I know a lot of stories about people who've been kicked out of productions because they're disrespectful. So I think that just being a good human being and trying to work together with people and be, you know, working for the person who's doing their music, or just trying to be also nice. Nice is very important in that subject as well, because you don't want to have people who have bad energies with you, because they won't take you to tour the country if you know, if you have bad energies. So that too. And I think something with that clicked, you know, about just wanting to do good and wanting to share your music and such. When I was watching the documentary about the Beatles, you know, everybody always remembers them as definitely the people who made this music that communicates to everybody, but they have such huge part also in doing good in history, you know, like performing around the country, and they were supposed to play in segregated venues and they refused. And I feel like it's part of, it's like an energy thing. You put good things in the world and it just works. It's part of music. Yeah.
And, you know, as a teacher, as a musician, as just a human being, you have so much going on in your life. How do you balance practicing and performing and teaching and your family and you as a social human being and all of the many, many parts of your life?
I don't always do very well with that. I keep a very organized schedule, so that I try not to forget about things that I'm doing. And, you know, sometimes you have to say no. If somebody wants you to rehearse on a day that, you know, well, somebody wants me to rehearse on a day that I already have 10 hours of rehearsing, working, teaching, I have to say no, or I have to move something. There has to be compromises. Some projects I have to say no, because that's how the world works. But I try to work as hard as I can, as I try to balance it out. And it includes time to rest, because it is important, and everybody knows themselves. But, you know, I gotta eat and I gotta sleep to keep on functioning, so I keep that in my schedule too. And sometimes I'll get too tired and I'll have to take a day off. So just trying to balance it as much as possible.
So, Yonit, those are all the questions that I have for you today. I'd love to open up questions from our audience.
Cool.
Yeah, there are some questions. Is this mic is working now? Okay, we've got some back and forth. Yeah, so a while back, Augustin Miguel asked, how do you handle stress and practice frustration?
That's a really good question, because there's definitely a lot of that to handle in day-to-day life. So it's kind of, it has to do with the question that we just had. First of all, I really care about my sleep. I can't function when I don't sleep. So I try to sleep these 7-8 hours a night. I meditate, because it does get very frustrating to try to push your music and then, you know, run from one venue to another, and rehearsals and teaching, and sometimes you just, you know, your brain gets too noisy. So I try to meditate as much as I can, and eat right. I know it's not very rock and roll, or it doesn't sound very rock and roll, but that gets me through the stress. And practice frustration, it's just sometimes you need to know when to let it go. If you feel like you're frustrated and you're just angry with yourself, I think the first thing that you got to do is leave your instrument alone, wait until it cools off, and then try again. Don't force yourself, because you may end up hating it even more. by trying to force it. It's kind of like there's the saying, "Don't go fishing when you're hungry." Don't go fishing when you're hungry. You know, so like wait for it to cool off, take a break, and then try to do it again. That's the way I deal with it.
Thank you. Okay, so
Sure.
from Yuri Stolov, we have, how much time do you spend transcribing the music you teach / study?
It depends. I mean, if it's it depends on the level of difficulty, which, you know, sometime it will take me 2 hours, and sometimes it will take me like a week, I guess, to go through it. It also depends on how much I really dive into it. I think that when I was studying music in college, I would spend way more time. I could spend like a month really tweaking all the little things in the transcription to see like exactly what the bass player or the musician was doing. These days, I would probably be more likely to spend like 2 hours to a week on every transcription. But sometimes I won't go, like I may just transcribe 2 verses and a chorus, unlike the whole song, because I'll just want to see what's the general vibe that is happening there.
Awesome. Okay, so the next question is from Moises Santa Cruz. What's your advice on ear training?
Yeah, so we were touching that subject a little bit before. My advice on ear training is put it on your instrument or try to play it. If you have a melodic instrument like bass, just play it and try to like trick yourself, I guess, or you know, guess what's happening when you're playing in a band. That's one option, but the other option is just like do it. You don't have to already challenge yourself. Oh, that's 1, that's 4. Like transcribe a song, for example, whether it's on every instrument that you do, transcribe a song and then try to think of it, okay, that's the 1, that's the 4, that's the 6, that's the 5, and then you'll transcribe another song and say, oh, that's the 1, that's the 3, and you know, just keep on going and just mention to yourself, that's this, that's that, that's this, and as you go, it's just gonna be like, you're just gonna see it and you're just gonna feel it when it happens. You know, it's just like when I teach improvisation, we don't improvise straight up on the top and like do everything just from air. We sit down and we write things down and say, oh, that's the way that the 9 sounds on this chord. That's the way that a 3rd sounds on this chord. And it's just by doing. You will get your ear training better by doing almost anything, as long as you're doing and as long as you're pointing out what it is that you're doing. Hope that it helped.
All right. So the last question we have currently, and if people have more questions, please enter them now. But Errol Campbell asks, what advice would you give to a beginner on bass?
Ooh, big question. Advice for a beginner. Well, just start doing it. I think that's the biggest thing is like buy the bass or like borrow the bass, get an amp, start playing. I think what I do with a lot of my beginners is I tell them, put down a list of 10 songs that you like, that you think are going to be doable. And you usually would know what's doable because like, I guess playing something, you know, super, super complicated, we can hear when something is very complicated. Maybe you can't put your hands on it. But music that you like, that you can identify and like kind of see what the bass is doing there, choose it and then try to work on it one by one. Obviously getting some lessons is always something that will be helpful. But yeah, I think the secret is start, like actually start, get all the things that you need to do to start, and then have very tangible goals like a list of 10 songs that are simple that you would like to play.
Okay, thanks so much. I think just one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. From Ben Stock, any tips for improving my rhythm? I'm great with a pick, but struggle when using fingers.
That makes sense because that's a complete different technique of playing the bass. So you're great with pick because you spend more time playing with pick. I think you may need some help with fingerstyle because you just didn't do it as much. So it's like what I said before, take it a step back. You know, don't try to do something, don't try to do like a very complicated disco funk thing. Don't try to play like Jamiroquai right away. Go to something that is more simple and make sure that you sit down with a metronome and really make it tight. And I've had like also videos about how to be better with rhythmic stuff, where again you can always, you know, take a lesson with a teacher and try to help you. But I think the main thing is take it back and spend more time playing fingerstyle, because that's really the magic in there. It's kind of like, you know, somebody can be amazing at fingerstyle and bass and not be able to slap at all, because it's almost a completely different instrument, or because it is a completely different attitude. So spend time with it, take it back, don't do something too complicated, and slowly build on top of it.
Great.
Cool.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It was
thank
fun.
you for being here, and thank you for all the great questions from our audience.
Yeah.
And we will be back on Thursday the 18th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time with our next session of Face the Music.
Can we introduce Melissa?
Yes.
So on the 18th of October, we are having Melissa Salguero here. She's the Grammy Award winner of this year for Educator of the Year. It's gonna be amazing. She's gonna talk about music for all ages. And tune in, join lessonface.com, and then you can sign up for free. And check us out on YouTube as well. See ya.